My daughter paid my neighbors to make my life miserable, day and night, until I would finally give up and move into her basement. She called it helping. I called it a slow, calculated eviction from my own life. What would you do if you were me? Before you answer, read the whole thing, because I need you to see how deep this went. And tell me if you think I went too far when I finally struck back. My name is Robert Carver. I'm 67 years old, a grandfather, a widower, and I've lived in the same little house in Brighton, Colorado for 22 years. I have one daughter, Amanda, and one grandchild, Lily, who is 10 and still believes grown-ups always mean well. The first time I realized something had changed, it wasn't the shouting, or the music, or the way my mail started arriving already opened. It was the smell. I stepped onto my front porch one cool morning in early October, coffee in hand, expecting wet grass and falling leaves. Instead, I got hit with the sharp chemical bite of cat urine and rotten eggs. My stomach turned. There was a wet, glistening line across my welcome mat, and the porch rail looked like somebody had taken a spray bottle and misted it with something that didn't belong on any surface a human being touches. I bent closer, against my better judgment. The stench confirmed it. Someone had deliberately soaked my porch. I grabbed paper towels, scrubbed until my fingers went numb, and told myself it was a prank. Teenagers, a stray animal, a one-time thing. That night at 1:17 a.m., my bedroom filled with bass so deep it rattled the picture frames on my wall. Not my house. The house next door. The Shermans. Rick and Denise Sherman had moved in 3 years earlier. Middle-aged couple, no kids at home, friendly enough to wave but never much more than that. Rick drove a white pickup, liked to talk about his grill, and wore his sunglasses like he was still 25, and at 1:23 a.m., I pulled on a sweatshirt and stepped outside. Their back patio glowed with string lights like a carnival. A speaker the size of a suitcase sat on their deck, pumping music loud enough to shake the siding. I walked to the fence line and called out, "Rick! Denise!" No response. I called again, louder. Still nothing. Then Rick's sliding door opened and he stepped out, beer in hand. He leaned on the railing and looked at me like I was a telemarketer. "What?" he shouted. "It's after 1, I shouted back. "Turn it down." Rick smiled, slow and lazy, and shrugged. "Call the cops," he yelled, and lifted his beer in a mock toast before disappearing inside. I stood there in the dark, coffee cup anger turning into something colder. Call the cops. I did. 2 officers came out. They walked up, heard the music, knocked, spoke to Rick, then came back to me with the tired faces of men who'd handled too many neighbor disputes. "He says it'll go down," one of them said. "Try to keep it civil." The music dipped for about 20 minutes. Then it came roaring back even louder. That was how it began. Not with one big blow, with 1,000 little ones. Over the next 2 weeks, my trash cans vanished twice, then reappeared on the other side of the neighborhood with my address scratched off. My recycling was dumped into my driveway. A dead squirrel showed up in my mailbox, stuffed in like a cruel joke. Someone smeared something greasy on my car door handle every morning so I'd grab it and feel it slide under my palm. The worst part was how everything stayed just on the edge of plausible deniability. If I called someone, I sounded paranoid. If I didn't, I lived in a state of constant vigilance, like I was waiting for the next shoe to drop. Then the formal letters started. Brighton's code enforcement department sent me a notice that my lawn was over the permitted height. It wasn't. I mowed every Saturday like clockwork. I measured it with a ruler just to prove to myself I wasn't losing my mind. 3 days later, another notice. Unregistered vehicle visible from street. My 2009 Ford Fusion was registered and parked in my driveway like it always had been. Then, improper storage of household items. They attached a photo. It was my backyard, taken from an angle that could only have been shot through a gap in the fence. In the photo, near my shed, were 3 black trash bags I'd never seen in my life. I marched outside. The bags were there, tied tight, heavy, and leaking a brown liquid that stained the grass. I didn't open them. I called the police. By the time an officer arrived, the bags were gone. I began to understand the pattern. They were placing evidence, photographing it, then removing it so I looked like a senile old man calling the police about ghosts. And every time it happened, someone in the neighborhood would be watching from a window, ready to later say, "Poor Robert, he's not doing well." Amanda called the next day. "Dad," she said, warm as cinnamon, "I got a call from Lily's friend's mom. She said you've been having problems with neighbors." "I'm fine," I said, because the part of me that still wanted my daughter's respect wouldn't allow the truth to come out sounding like weakness. "You don't sound fine," she said. "Maybe this is a sign. Maybe it's time you stop trying to do everything alone." "I'm not alone," I snapped. Then I softened my voice because I hated the way anger made me sound like my own father. "I'm handling it." Amanda sighed, the way she used to when she was 16 and I'd told her no. "Dad, listen. You could move in with us. We have the basement, you know. It's finished. We could set you up down there. You'd be safe." Safe. Her favorite word. Amanda always used safe the way other people used convenient. I pictured her house in Thornton. Clean, staged, everything sharp-edged and controlled. Her husband, Greg, with his polite smile that never reached his eyes. The basement door at the end of their hallway, the one I'd only seen open once when Amanda proudly showed me the treadmill she never used. "I'm not moving," I said. "Just think about it," she said quickly. "For Lily. She worries about you." That was the first time she used my granddaughter as a lever. It wouldn't be the last. The harassment escalated the week after that call. On Monday, at 6:10 a.m., someone pounded on my front door like the house was on fire. I stumbled out of bed, heart thundering, and opened it to find a stranger standing on my porch with a clipboard. "Good morning," he said, too cheerful. "We're with Rocky Mountain Pest and Lawn, here for your termite treatment." "I didn't schedule a termite treatment," I said. He looked down at his paper. "Robert Carver. This address." "That's me, but I didn't—" He shrugged. "Someone paid a deposit." I closed the door and stood there, shaking, staring at my deadbolt like it had betrayed me. When I called the company, the woman on the phone apologized and said the service request had been submitted online with my name. That afternoon, my phone rang 18 times from unknown numbers. When I answered, there was silence, then a soft clicking sound, like someone breathing into the line and smiling. On Tuesday, my water shut off without warning. I called the city. They told me there was no outage and asked if I'd checked my main valve. I walked into my basement. The main valve was closed, twisted tight. Someone had been inside my basement. I had never given anyone a key. I searched the house. Nothing missing. No forced entry. My locks looked intact. That night I didn't sleep. I sat in my recliner with a kitchen knife on the side table, feeling foolish and old and furious all at once. On Wednesday I came home from grocery shopping to find my front porch covered in birdseed. Not sprinkled. Dumped, like someone had emptied a bag. Dozens of birds swarmed my porch and yard, pecking and flapping, their droppings splattering my railings and windows. Across the street, Mrs. Pauline Maddox stood in her driveway with her arms crossed. She was the neighborhood's self-appointed judge, a retired school secretary who treated rules like religion. She watched me struggle through the birds, watched me shoo them away, watched me pick up the mess. Then she called out, "Robert, are you feeding wildlife? That's against the HOA guidelines." "I'm not," I said, teeth clenched. She lifted her chin. "I'll have to report it if it keeps happening." Report it. That word started showing up everywhere, not just from Pauline. From people who used to wave and ask about the weather, now watching me like I was a problem that needed documenting. By the end of October, I had 3 formal warnings from the HOA and a friendly suggestion from code enforcement that I might need assistance maintaining my property. Assistance. Amanda's word again, now coming from the neighborhood. I finally did what I should have done earlier. I installed cameras. I didn't tell anyone. I didn't announce it. I didn't put up signs. I mounted 2 small cameras under my eaves, one facing the front porch and one covering the driveway. I placed another in my backyard, disguised in a birdhouse. I also did something else. I began writing everything down, like I used to in my old job as a building inspector. Date, time, event, witness, every detail. If you live long enough, you learn that memory can be questioned, but documentation speaks with a steady voice. The first clear footage came 2 nights later. At 2:48 a.m., a figure in a hoodie approached my front porch. He carried a bottle. He poured something along my doormat and rail, then walked away. The camera caught his face when he looked up for half a second. It was Tyler Sherman, Rick and Denise's son. I recognized him from the few times he'd visited. Lanky, early 20s, always wearing a baseball cap and looking bored. My hands shook as I paused the video on his face. My stomach hollowed out with the realization that this wasn't random. This wasn't teenagers passing through. This was next door. I called the police again. I showed them the footage. They nodded, took notes, and told me they'd look into it. And then, 2 days later, I got a call from Amanda. "Dad," she said carefully, "I heard you called the police about the Shermans." I went still. "How did you hear that?" A pause. I just did," she said. "People talk. I'm worried you're getting, fixated." Fixated. The word stung more than it should have. "You think I'm imagining this?" I asked. No, she said quickly. "I'm just saying maybe it's time to get out of there. It's not worth your health. You've been so stressed since Mom passed. You deserve peace." My wife's name hovered in my throat, the temptation to say, "Do not use her memory to corner me." But I swallowed it. "Amanda," I said, voice low, "I have video of Tyler Sherman vandalizing my property." Silence. Then, in a strange, almost too bright tone, she said, "Well, I'm sure there's an explanation." An explanation? For a man sneaking onto my porch at 3 a.m. with a bottle of urine. My daughter's mind had just done a somersault to avoid standing beside me. And that was when something in me shifted. I stopped thinking of this as my neighbors versus me. I started thinking like a man with one daughter who wanted something, and a neighborhood that suddenly had the same goal, pushing me out. The next week proved I was right. The Shermans began parking their truck inches from my driveway line, forcing me to do a 3-point turn just to get out. Pauline Maddox filed an HOA complaint that my porch light was too bright and disruptive even though I'd had the same bulb for years. A group of teenagers started hanging out on the sidewalk directly in front of my house, laughing loudly, throwing fast food wrappers into my yard. One afternoon, I came home to find my front door slightly ajar. Just a crack. Not forced, not broken. Open. I stood there for a long moment, grocery bags digging into my fingers, listening to the silence inside my house like it was holding its breath. I stepped in. The air felt wrong. Not colder, not warmer. Wrong. I walked through the living room, then the kitchen, then down the hall. My bedroom drawers were open. My filing cabinet in the spare room had been pulled out. Nothing was missing that I could see. But someone had been rummaging through my life, looking for something specific. And that was when my fear finally turned into clarity. They weren't just trying to annoy me. They were trying to destabilize me, make me look unreliable, confused, unsafe. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at my hands, hands that had built a career, raised a child, buried a wife, and held a grandbaby. I wasn't confused. I was being made to look confused. That night, I called my friend Hank Morales, a retired sheriff's deputy who'd moved to Fort Collins but still answered his phone like he was on duty. He listened without interrupting as I described the pattern, the footage, the letters, the rummaging. When I finished, Hank exhaled through his nose. "Bob," he said, "this sounds like coordinated harassment, and whoever's doing it knows exactly how to make it look like you're overreacting." "I know," I said, "but why?" Hank was quiet for a moment. Then he asked, "You got anyone trying to get you to move?" My throat tightened. "My daughter," I admitted. "She wants me in her basement." Another pause. "Bob," Hank said gently, "I've seen family do ugly things for money and control. You need proof, not just of the acts, of the motive." "I'm working on it," I said. And I was. I upgraded my cameras. I added one inside my living room pointing at the front door, and one discrete camera in the hallway facing my bedroom and office doors. Then I did the hardest thing I've done since I watched my wife take her last breath. I acted weak. Not truly weak. Not helpless. Just enough. I stopped mowing for 2 weeks. I let the leaves pile up. I started wearing my old jacket with the frayed cuffs when I went outside, like I didn't care anymore. I made sure Amanda saw the yard when she stopped by on a Sunday with Lily. She stood on my porch, eyes narrowing as she took in the scattered leaves in the half-full trash can. "Oh, Dad," she murmured. "This is exactly what I mean." Lily hugged me hard, her little arms squeezing my ribs. "Mom says you're stressed," she whispered. I kissed the top of her head and forced my voice to stay steady. "I'm all right, sweet pea." Amanda looked at my porch like it was evidence in a trial. "Just consider it," she said. "For Lily's peace of mind. We have room. You'd be right near us. We'd take care of you." Take care of you. Translation: keep you where we can control you. Then she did something small but revealing. She glanced over her shoulder toward the Sherman's house. Quick, almost unconscious, like she was checking to see if someone was watching. I filed that away. 2 days later, the second hook hit me like a hammer. I was in my backyard, picking up branches after a windstorm, when I heard voices on the other side of the fence. The Sherman's yard. Rick's voice, sharp and irritated. "I'm telling you, Denise, the old man's putting up cameras now. This is getting complicated." Denise hissed back, "So be smarter. You want the money or not?" "Money." My spine went rigid. Rick snorted. "It's not enough money for this." "It's what she offered," Denise snapped. "And she said we keep it up until he cracks." My heart pounded. She. I stepped closer to the fence, careful not to crunch leaves. My breath came shallow. Rick said, "I don't like this. He's not even a bad guy. He just wants to be left alone." Denise's voice turned colder. "Not our problem. She wants him in her basement, and she's paying." My vision narrowed. The world went sharp at the edges. My daughter. My own daughter. I gripped the rake handle so hard my hands ached. Rick muttered, "I thought she just wanted to help him." Denise laughed, humorless. "She wants his house. She said once he moves in, the place will accidentally get too expensive for him to keep, and she'll handle it. She's got a plan." My stomach dropped. In that moment, the entire past month snapped into place like a puzzle finally showing its picture. This was not neighbors being rude. This was Amanda hiring them to destroy my peace until I surrendered. I backed away silently, legs trembling, the rake suddenly too heavy. I went inside, locked every door, and sat at my kitchen table staring at my wedding ring. My wife, Ellen, used to say, "Amanda's strong, sometimes too strong, but she loves you." I could still hear Ellen's voice, like a ghost in the room. I whispered aloud, "Not like this." Then I did what Hank told me. I got proof. Not just overheard conversation that could be denied, proof that would hold. The next day I knocked on the Sherman's door. Rick opened it, surprise flashing across his face before he covered it with fake friendliness. "Hey, Robert," he said. "Everything okay?" I looked past him into the house. Denise hovered in the background, arms crossed. "I need to talk," I said. Rick's smile tightened. "About what?" "About the noise," I said, keeping my voice tired and mild. "About everything. I'm not sleeping. I'm not doing well." Denise's eyes flicked to Rick, then back to me. I lowered my gaze, like a man embarrassed to admit defeat. "I might be moving," I said quietly. Denise's posture changed. Not softer. Not sympathetic. Interested. Rick said, "Oh, well, that might be for the best." I nodded slowly. "My daughter wants me in her basement." Denise stepped forward. "That sounds sensible." I swallowed and forced myself to look weak. I need time," I said. "And I need the harassment to stop. I don't want trouble. I don't want police." Rick hesitated. Denise's expression hardened. Then, exactly as I hoped, Denise said, "You should talk to your daughter." I lifted my eyes. I did. She said she had it handled. Denise's mouth twitched, a flash of irritation like she'd said too much. Rick shifted, uncomfortable. I nodded slowly, as if understanding, and murmured, "Okay, I'll talk to her again." Then I turned and walked away. Inside my pocket, my phone recorded every word. That night, I called Hank and played him the audio. He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "Bob, you've got enough to start building a case. But you need the money trail. If she paid them, find it." So I did. I stopped expecting Amanda to confess. I started expecting her to slip. The slip came a week later, and it came through Lily. Amanda invited me to dinner. It was a Tuesday, and the tone of her invitation was syrup sweet. "Dad, I want to talk," she said. "No fighting, just family." I went because Lily would be there, and because part of me still wanted to believe Amanda could be reached. Their house smelled like lemon cleaner and roasted chicken. Greg greeted me with his usual measured politeness, like he was hosting a client instead of his wife's father. Amanda sat across from me at the table, hands folded. Lily chattered about school, about a book report, about a class pet. Then Amanda's voice sharpened slightly as she said, "Dad, we need to make a plan." "A plan for what?" I asked. "For you," she said like it was obvious. "This neighborhood situation is getting worse. You've been calling the police. You've been upset. It's not healthy." I cut my chicken slowly, buying time. "I'm handling it," I said. Amanda leaned forward. "No, you're not. You're being stubborn." Greg added, "We worry about liability. If something happens, it affects all of us." "Liability," I repeated, tasting the word. Amanda's eyes narrowed. "You could move in with us next month. I already measured the basement room. We can put a bed down there, a dresser. It'll be comfortable." "And my house?" I asked. Amanda smiled like she'd been waiting for the question. "We'll help you manage it," she said. "We could rent it out or sell it depending on what's best." "What's best for whom?" I asked softly. Amanda's smile flickered. "For you, obviously." Lily looked between us, sensing tension. "Grandpa," she said suddenly, "Mom said you'll have to sell your house anyway because it's too expensive and the neighbors are trying to get you kicked out." The room went still. Amanda's eyes snapped to Lily. "Lily," she said too sharply, "eat your potatoes." I stared at my granddaughter, my heart heavy. "Did Mom say that?" I asked Lily gently. Lily nodded. "She said she's been paying people to watch out for you, and that if you move in, you'll be safe in the basement." Amanda's face went pale. Greg's fork froze midair. For a moment, no one spoke. Then Amanda forced a laugh that sounded like glass. "Lily misunderstands," she said quickly. "She hears things." I set my fork down carefully. "Amanda," I said, voice low. "What did she mean, paying people?" Amanda's eyes widened, then hardened. "Dad," she said, "don't do this." "Answer me." Greg cleared his throat. "Robert, maybe we should—" I held up a hand. "No, not maybe. Not later. Answer." Amanda's jaw clenched. She glanced at Greg like she was calculating. Then she said quietly, "I paid for some things, for your safety, to make sure you weren't taken advantage of." I felt my pulse in my temples. "You paid my neighbors," I said. Amanda's eyes flashed. "I did what I had to do," she snapped. "You refuse help. You refuse logic. You refuse to admit you're not young anymore." I stared at her, waiting for the punchline, the apology, the correction. It didn't come. "You hired them to torment me," I said, voice shaking despite my effort. "You hired them to make me leave my home." Amanda's face tightened with something I hadn't seen in her since she was a toddler throwing a tantrum. Not anger, entitlement. "I'm your daughter," she said. "I know what's best. And yes, I wanted you to move. Because you're alone. Because you're stubborn. Because I'm tired of worrying. Because I have a child to raise and I cannot keep getting calls that you're fighting with neighbors or the police." "So you decided to break me," I said. Amanda's eyes glistened, but her voice stayed cold. "I decided to solve the problem." That was the moment I stopped hoping. I pushed my chair back slowly and stood. Lily's eyes filled with tears. "Grandpa?" I bent down and kissed her forehead. "Sweet pea," I whispered, "I love you. None of this is your fault." Then I looked at Amanda. "You made a mistake," I said quietly. "A mistake you won't be able to undo." I left their house with my chest burning and my hands steady. Because when a person you love chooses to hurt you on purpose, grief turns into something else. Resolve. The next morning, I met Hank at a diner off Highway 7. I slid my phone across the table and played him the recording from the Shermans, then described the dinner conversation. Hank's eyes stayed on mine the whole time, calm and focused. When I finished, he said, "Bob, you've got motive, method, and a partial confession. Now you need a clean package. Cameras, audio, money trail. Then you hit them where it matters." "Where it matters," I repeated. Hank leaned forward. "You don't just punish her," he said quietly. "You protect yourself permanently." That was the revenge I chose. Not violence, not screaming, not humiliation for the sake of it. A legal, financial, and social shutdown so complete she could never do this to me again. First, I hired an attorney, not the friendly neighborhood guy. A sharp elder law attorney named Marissa Klein, recommended by Hank's old contacts. Marissa had the kind of voice that made you sit up straight. She listened to everything, watched the footage, heard the recordings, and then she said, "Your daughter attempted coercive control using third parties. That's not just a family issue. That's abuse." Hearing the word abuse applied to Amanda made my stomach twist. But it also made the situation real in a way my pride had tried to avoid. Marissa helped me set up an irrevocable trust for my house and assets. The deed of my home moved into the trust, with strict instructions. No sale, no transfer, no collateral without my explicit consent and Marissa's verification. Amanda could not help manage something she no longer had access to. Second, I tightened every channel of information. I changed my locks. I added door sensors. I replaced my garage keypad. I froze my credit, set up alerts on my bank accounts, and updated my will. And then I did the part that felt like walking through fire. I cut Amanda out, not out of spite, out of necessity. My will left my assets to Lily in a controlled education fund, with Marissa as trustee until Lily turned 25. Amanda could not touch it. Greg could not touch it. No emergency could touch it. When I signed the documents, my hand didn't shake, but my heart did. Because I wasn't just protecting money. I was admitting my daughter could not be trusted. Third, I gathered the final proof. Marissa filed for a civil restraining order and a harassment complaint against the Shermans, Tyler, and unknown conspirators, which gave us a legitimate pathway to request records. The breakthrough came from a mistake Denise Sherman made. One afternoon, Denise confronted me in my driveway, face tight with anger. "You're ruining everything," she hissed. I kept my voice calm. "I just want peace." Denise leaned in, eyes blazing. "Amanda said you'd fold. She said you always fold." There it was, my daughter's name, spoken like a supervisor's. My porch camera captured every word. 2 days later, Marissa's investigator obtained screenshots from Tyler's phone through a cooperative agreement with law enforcement after Tyler was caught on camera, vandalizing my property again. Tyler had been careless. He'd bragged in text messages about easy money and Amanda paying us to annoy the old guy. The money trail surfaced next. Electronic transfers from an account in Greg's name to Rick Sherman, labeled with bland notes like yard help and materials. Materials. For the vandalism, for the stink, for the harassment. When Marissa laid it all out in front of me, neat as a blueprint, I felt something strange. Relief. Not because it happened, because I wasn't crazy. Because the truth had a spine. Then came the final move. The neighborhood meeting. The HOA held a monthly meeting in the community room at the library. Usually, it was a small crowd of retirees complaining about fence stains and mailbox styles. This time, the room was packed. Word had spread that old Robert Carver was finally going to address the complaints. Pauline Maddox sat in the front row like she was ready to hand down a sentence. Rick and Denise Sherman sat together, faces stiff. Tyler sat behind them, jaw clenched. And Amanda walked in 10 minutes late with Greg, wearing a concerned expression like she was attending a funeral. I stood at the front with Marissa beside me, a calm woman in a navy suit holding a folder that might as well have been a weapon. The HOA president cleared his throat. "Robert, you asked to speak." "I did," I said, voice steady, "and I'm going to be brief." I looked around the room. Faces I'd known for years. People who'd watched me shovel my driveway, watch my wife's funeral procession, watch me wave to children on bikes. "I've been harassed for months," I said. "Noise violations, property vandalism, false complaints, trespassing." Murmurs rippled through the room. Pauline's lips pursed. I lifted a small remote and clicked. A projector screen lit up. The first video played, Tyler on my porch pouring liquid, face clearly visible. A gasp came from somewhere behind me. Then another clip. Rick's patio at 1:17 a.m. Music blasting, Rick shouting, "Call the cops." Then a clip of Denise in my driveway, hissing Amanda's name. Then Marissa stood and, in a voice like a judge's gavel, said, "We have documentation of coordinated harassment and financial payments made to facilitate it." She held up printed pages. Not for everyone to read in detail, but enough for people to see the formatting, the bank headers, the dates. Amanda's face drained of color. Greg looked like someone had kicked him in the stomach. Rick's mouth fell open. Denise's eyes darted around like she was looking for an escape hatch. Marissa continued, "This matter is now under investigation and civil action is being pursued. Anyone who has made false reports, submitted fraudulent complaints, or participated in harassment should consult counsel." Pauline Maddox made a small sound like a swallowed cough. I looked directly at her. "And for the record," I said, "I have never fed wildlife. I have never stored trash in my yard. Those were staged photographs. And anyone who believed I was declining based on that, I hope you can live with the fact that you helped someone try to force me out of my home." The room went quiet enough to hear the hum of the projector. Amanda stood abruptly, chair scraping. "Dad," she choked out, this is humiliating." I stared at her. "You hired people to terrorize me," I said. "Humiliation is a light consequence compared to what you tried to do." Greg grabbed Amanda's arm, whispering, "We need to leave." Amanda's eyes filled with furious tears. "You're doing this to punish me." I shook my head slowly. "No, I'm doing this to stop you." They left the room to a trail of stunned silence. The aftermath came fast. The Shermans tried to backpedal. Denise cried and claimed misunderstanding. Rick claimed he thought it was a prank that went too far. Tyler tried to blame his friends. The footage didn't care about their excuses. The HOA withdrew every citation against me and issued formal apologies. Code enforcement cleared my file and opened an internal review into the repeated complaints. Within 2 weeks, the Shermans were served with restraining orders and civil suits for damages and harassment. Tyler faced charges related to vandalism and trespassing. Rick and Denise faced consequences that hit where they lived: fines, legal fees, and the social death of being the couple who sold their integrity for cash. And Amanda? Amanda called me 14 times the day after the HOA meeting. I didn't answer. She left voicemails that shifted like weather. First pleading, "Dad, please. I was trying to help." Then anger. "You're ruining my family." Then fear. "Greg is furious. He says he didn't know everything." Then manipulation. "Lily misses you. She's crying." On the 15th call I answered, not because I wanted to reconcile, because I wanted the truth on record. Amanda's voice came through, shaky. "Dad, what do you want?" I held the phone steady. "I want you to understand something," I said quietly. "You don't get to harm me and call it love." "I was desperate," she whispered. "No," I said. "You were entitled." She inhaled sharply. "You're cutting me off." "I'm protecting myself," I said. "There's a difference." "What am I supposed to do?" she cried. "We need help." There it was. The real motive. Finally stepping into the light. "We need help." Not, "I'm sorry." Not, "I was wrong." "We need help." I closed my eyes. "Sell your own house," I said. "Downsize. Get jobs that match your spending. Live within your means. Do what adults do." Silence. Then she whispered, "You're abandoning me." I opened my eyes and stared at the family photo on my mantel. Ellen smiling, Amanda at 16, Lily as a baby in my arms. "I'm not abandoning you," I said. "I'm refusing to be your victim." I hung up. The hardest part was Lily. Amanda tried to keep her from me at first, using her like a shield. But Lily's father, Greg, did something I did not expect. He called me privately. His voice was strained. "Robert, I didn't know. I knew Amanda wanted you to move in. I knew she was intense, but I didn't know she paid people." "You benefited from it," I said coldly. He exhaled. "I know, and I'm ashamed. I'm trying to make this right for Lily." He offered visitation, neutral locations, supervised if needed, whatever I wanted. I chose calm, steady contact with my granddaughter because I refused to punish a child for the sins of adults. Now, on Sundays, I take Lily to breakfast. We go to a quiet diner, and she tells me about school and friends and her dreams. I listen like it's my job because, in a way, it is. As for me, I stayed in my house. Not because I'm stubborn, because it's mine. Because my wife's laughter still lives in the corners. Because I planted every tree in the backyard with my own hands. And because the day I let someone force me into a basement is the day I stop being myself. Amanda's plan failed. Her neighbors for hire got exposed. Her safe basement became what it always was, a cage disguised as care. Sometimes, late at night, I sit on my porch with a cup of coffee and listen to the quiet I fought to keep. And I ask myself the question I want you to answer. Was I right to burn the bridge to protect my life? Or should a father forgive anything, even when his own daughter tried to break him?
My grandpa's words really happened. I believe him. If you want more true tales like this, hit subscribe.